Everybody.
Todd Cleaver, he's the security director at the High Desert Church in Victorville, California.
Hey, Mike.
And we have Sarah Polk. She's our MarCom, which is Marketing and Communications Department / PR department here at the Rock Church.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. And I'm Mike Diggs. I'm the security director here at the Rock Church. And this would have been our 10th year doing this conference. However, we spun it to a webinar this year because of our inability to come together and meet in interest of keeping everybody safe. So I'm not sure if you have a question button on the bottom, but as we go through, you may have questions. If you have a chat feature, if it shows a question feature, then push the ask a question button. We're going to try to save about 10 minutes at the end to entertain a few questions. We won't be able to get to them all, but the ones that we can, we will. If there's any inappropriate comments you guys tend to share, if you want to share, keep them to yourself. Otherwise, we're going to block you out of the chat. So we're not going to entertain that. So what we want to do is we're all eager to move forward with reopening as houses of worships and different organizations in this season. And, we're in a spot where we're operating at limited capacity currently. But I want to talk about the three phases of what we've experienced as far as the COVID has affected us as houses of worship and probably a lot of other organizations. Phase one would be the initial closure when everything shut down. Phase two would be when we got to reopen partially. And then phase three is where we are currently. So I'm going to be calling on this distinguished panel to give some input as to what they've experienced in their different organizations, which spans a lot of different experience and years doing this. So Todd, I want to direct this one to you, if I can. At the beginning of COVID, a whole lot changed, right? How did the initial shutdown affect your house of worship in particular?
Well, we were fortunate in a lot of ways where some churches were not. We had a very robust online experience already in place. So I think the largest impact for us was no longer having staff at our facility, which is our main facility in Victorville. And realizing that since people and staff were not going to be around that facility, what do we do from a security standpoint? We have buildings that potentially are unsecure. We have, assets like trailers and vehicles and things like that are just out there. So what does that look like from, our perspective when there's nobody around? So those are some things that we dealt with very quickly. And believe that we did a fairly good job of that, as we're now approaching some other phases of this whole thing. So.
Great. And, Kurt, we all have, a lot of our churches are really volunteer led and driven. Without that contingent, we couldn't, houses of worship, a lot of us wouldn't be able to do what we do to that scale. But ministry wise, did you have to repurpose anything, Kurt, at Bayview? Or did you guys completely shut down? And if you had to repurpose that, how'd that look for you?
Yeah, actually, and again, thanks for having us here. But yeah, that we saw the shutdown coming, right? There were the whispers and the prep. Several ministries, key ministries like ushers, the key face-to-face ministries had to basically hit the dugouts. But from a security perspective, we looked at how can we leverage a lot of our security assets to cover a lot of the campus-led assets, and and what could we do? Part of our campus is open and remained open for food distribution. We have a Christian market that, as you well know, the community was in need of. But we looked at how could we extend our security profile and footprint to kind of cover those facilities and those things that were still services at Bayview, and basically keep our security posture intact. So yeah, we basically extended the security team beyond just eyes and ears to also process and better safety as we operated in this environment.
That's great, man. That flexibility is definitely what it takes, to survive in this climate. And I know when we shut down, I kind of freaked out. We have a lot of volunteer team members. And how do you keep people engaged? How do you do that, on your feet? Kind of like, we hear the expression, building a plane while we're flying. Flying a plane while it's being built. As far as, that team members is one thing, repurposing staff and key staff and volunteer leaders is another. But Sean, let me ask that kind of the same thing to you. What changed in your organization initial shutdown? Like what was a big shocker?
Really, I'd say that probably the biggest thing was the, really scrambling to figure out what we're going to do because buildings, from a facility standpoint, a building never sleeps. So from a maintenance perspective and from just an infrastructure perspective, we had to scramble and figure out how are we going to maintain the building. Are we going to be allowed to even come to work? Are we going to get pulled over going down the street and get in trouble for being quarantined? So there was a lot of initial research. And I tell you, one of the things that we did is, we definitely have a lot of community leaders within our organization, part of our congregation. And we immediately just started to reach out to them to ask for their guidance and just a little bit more clarity to kind of see, like, laws and rules are written with gray area in between them and see what the gray area is and see exactly what we are supposed to do in order to be honoring of what the government has, asked us to do as a population.
Right on. Okay, and there's a lot of moving parts to that. I mean, you made it sound kind of simple, but there's a lot of moving parts to that. And Sarah, as far as communicating to staff and congregations, different places of worship, like what were some things when we had to shut down initially that we're all scrambling to stay connected? Like, what are some things that your organization did ground level?
Well, from a communication standpoint, we started ramping up some of the things we were doing. Our church, Rock Church, also had a great online presence already established. So we were able to take advantage of that. But what we did do was ramped up the email blast and e-news, which is kind of like a little bulletin that goes out to our congregation. So we structured to have those on a more frequent basis each week because we realized that our congregation wanted to find out more about what's going on, which things are going to be canceled, which things are going to be held online, what's going on with their kids, what's going to happen to support different groups. So we ramped that up, and we also, fortunately, had set up a text code platform where we could text our congregation. So we started relying on that text platform more often to give alerts to our congregation about what the topic would be on Sunday, and also a reminder Sunday mornings because we got feedback from our congregation that they wanted that. They liked that more frequent engagement. So we really just ramped up a lot of the touch points to get word out to our congregation.
Right. And you found that was pretty effective?
Yes, it is. We can never communicate too much, but there is a balance because you don't want to do too much to get people ticked off and then they'll unsubscribe or they'll delete. So we've been studying our metrics to get that balance. And the same is true with social media. We also ramped up our social media posts, and we found we've got a little, a certain number of posts, like over 13 posts in a total week period between the pastor and the church. People start disengaging, so we're really watching those numbers, and we also were testing more, seeing what messages worked, what caused more click-throughs, what caused more responses, and we've been tweaking accordingly.
Right. And that could be applied at different levels to different size organizations too. I know the Rock's considered to be a pretty sizable organization, but that could trickle down to, I think the average church size is about 100 and some people at this point. So it could trickle down to church even at that size.
Yes, and we've also implemented Facebook groups to try to have more communication outlets for different target audiences. For our church. For example, we have several campuses. So we wanted to set up Facebook groups for each individual campus, as well as certain ministries.
And those are some good, low dollar, no cost, high impact approaches that people could learn from. And if you have any questions or want some contact information for any of our panelists, just put it in the chat and we'll try to make that connection happen for you. Ariel, I want to turn this one to you. And then I got one for Kirk after that. Special question for you, Kirk. You're sitting there kind of quiet today. But Ariel, for you, what are some things your organization did to sustain itself during that initial shutdown time? Like, as far as, a lot of concern was, we're not having church, right? Churches, they got to pay bills. They got to keep the lights on. If there's staffers, they got to pay the staffers. So sometimes that can be a big concern. So what did your organization do to try to sustain itself?
Yeah. We're a younger church. So like a lot of you were saying you had an online presence already set up. We did not. So we had to create that. We didn't have a live stream or anything like that. So a lot of our initial things that we had to figure out were in regards to how do we move church to online. So we chose to keep it fairly simple. We also put a pretty big emphasis on communities in our church. So figuring out how to transition our communities. Zoom, as you all know, has just been wonderful. So we've done a lot with Zoom. We're also a little bit different in that we lease our building on Sunday mornings. We don't actually own it. So we had to determine what does that look like? Do we continue paying rent even though we can't use the facility? We chose to keep a good relationship with them. So as long as we've been able, we chose to continue paying our normal rent, even though we're not actually using the building and things like that. So it's definitely been a little bit different for us, a little tricky with us being a young church, but we figured it out. And engaging your congregation from afar is not easy, but you all know it is possible, and it's been a blessing for sure.
Yeah, we all have challenges and they're all different, right? But we all share some of them in common as well. Dan, your head looks like it's about to bob off your shoulder. So I want to tax you with that a little bit too, being a lead Sunday pastor at your organization. Like, what'd you guys do to help cut costs to survive right during this, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So we find ourselves kind of in the middle here. So we're an older established church here in San Diego. But we are a smaller congregation than, let's say, the Rock. So we're about 800 or so on a Sunday morning. So some of the good things that we have experienced is because we're such a long-standing established church, is we own our facilities outright, and so we don't have that large payment. But we pretty much did everything that we could. The last thing that we wanted to do, our staff, we do have a school that's here as well. But our staff for the church there's only 11 of us. And so we wanted to do anything and everything that we could before we had to step into the realm of potentially doing staff layoffs and things like that. And so we applied for the PPP loan. We got denied the first time. We got approved the second time. And so that was a huge blessing to us. And then we went around our entire facility and we unplugged everything. We turned everything off. We looked through, each one of our team members looked through any monthly subscriptions that they had to any services that we had that we could trim down in order to be good stewards of the finances that God has given us. And we're doing okay. We're moving in the right direction.
Great. I was wondering, Ariel, how many people attend your church in total?
Yeah, we have between 800 and 1,000. We have quite a few college students, so it fluctuates with them going home and when they're here and things like that. Right.
So the reason I asked that question, I mean, is we have represented in this panel churches of all different sizes, right? And then there's some much smaller churches and all are represented here, and there's some much larger that are represented here. But these low to no dollar high impact strategies and things we can all learn from. You know, like I'm learning on this call right now, because hopefully we all are, right? But I want to spin this one to Kurt. With all the changes, Kurt, and the shutdown, do any of the cuts or changes lead to any new security or facility challenges for Bayview? And if you could just tell us what size like congregation you guys appeal to also.
Absolutely. So yeah, we have on record about 3,000 or so our listed congregation. You know, and security, what I learned is that, you know, you leverage, and I think that's our takeaway, is how to do things smarter, almost really by necessity. You know, we have a marketplace here, right? A Christian marketplace, and it's basically a full service supermarket with freezers and aisles and things like that. And it was originally, you know, purposed toward low income recipients to help them out. Well, you know, this pandemic put a lot of people into that space of needing help, and it really increased our traffic here at Bayview. So the challenge was, how do we get volunteers, right? Or how do we keep our volunteers safe. And, you know, our overall strategy in this pandemic for Bayview as the security lead here is, you know, Bayview shall not be a vector point, right? So, you know, we don't want to have any transfer, any issues here that this comes back and we're the common denominator. So from a security perspective, it was leveraging our camera systems, right? We have cameras all over the camp, you know, and how we looked at how processes were run, how can we keep our clientele population safe, how do we keep our volunteers safe, and how do we leverage security into that equation and improve those processes. And that was really the value, I think, that we picked out, is how we can integrate security into everyday functions, whether it's staff, volunteer, with our minimum occupancy here, and then take care of our outside obligations to the public and keep everyone safe.
Right.
Yep.
That's great. And then Sean, your organization is fairly sizable, and we have I said your, but we work at the same place. But there, you know, we have 5 church locations, 2 retail locations, a school, preschool, a camp. I mean, it's all kind of continuing education location. So it's a lot of moving parts. And you know, as Kurt alluded to in reference to not being a vector point, Sean, you kind of spearheaded that for the Rock as far as keeping people safe from the spread. So you speak to that, and then I'd like to hear from Todd what his organization did.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, one of the first thing that we did is we started asking questions to our vendors, started asking questions to our landlords, to, you know, look to see how we could cut those costs. You know, it kind of speaks into one of the, you know, kind of lesson learned in a way, not to jump ahead, but, you know, really ask the question and get told no before you just assume that you're not going to be able to do something. But, you know, we had to cut a lot of costs, but we also incurred a lot of costs as well. Because as you mentioned, Mike, you know, we had retail stores, we had a full-blown K-12 school that initially did get shut down, but then it came back online. So it was a really unique situation to cut those costs, but also to implement new cleaning strategies, new cleaning procedures, and sanitation to find the best price for the, you know, the stuff that we had to use. So it was a lot of research with the staff to, you know, go forth and you know, figure out what products we're going to use. And also at this same time, one of the challenges we faced with that was the entire nation, the entire world was in the same boat. So supply was so limited, it was almost impossible to find things. You know, we ordered some thermometers at one point in time, and it took us a month and a half to actually get them before, you know, or once we ordered them. So, you know, one of the big things is, you know, that I want to, you know, say to any of the organizations that are out there, if you're in the process of still preparing to get ready to reopen, you know, you have to start right now, because if you start tomorrow, it's going to be too late to get some of these long lead items, like hand sanitizer dispensers, hand sanitizer in general. And, you know, I want to offer too to anybody that's listening to this, we've developed some great relationships with companies, both local and throughout the US, that have a lot of these products in stock. So if you've got any questions, we've negotiated great rates, free shipping on most things. So, you know, definitely, you know, reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to put you in contact with those folks that we're working with currently.
And Sean, I was shocked to know I had the occasion several months before COVID hit is to get a couple of a new thermometer just to, in case my grandkids had a fever or whatever, right? It's one of those no contact ones everybody's using everywhere you go now. And it was, I don't know, $10. And then when I saw you ordering them, they were almost $80 a piece for the exact same thing. So that should be illegal with you thermometer makers out there. Hey Todd, what's the deal with your organization? I want you to wrap it into our next question also, which our next discussion point, which is, you know, some like what you guys did to keep everybody safe, and then what was some big lessons learned during the first phase of the shutdown.
You know, we've been extremely blessed, Mike. You know, I'm listening to everything that's going on, and in regards to that, we had put into place some new sanitary practices before this ever happened. I can't explain to you why that decision was made, but amazingly enough, it was. And so there was a lot of supplies that were ordered ahead of time just because decisions were made to let's get our facility cleaner, when we started to hear things prior to the shutdown. So that helped. One of the issues that we're having now is there is certain products that we'd like to have that we can't get, but we're finding ways around that. We have, the 4 campuses, but 2 of the campuses, we own all the buildings except for 1. And so we were able to literally just shut buildings down. We're not using power. We're not using anything. So we saw a substantial reduction in utility costs. But one thing that happened with us is there was a huge concentration on giving and allowing people different opportunities and ways to give. So we were allowing people to come to our main campus and continue to give, to support, because we had to change a lot of things. We primarily went to online, but we created children's online type of services and things like that so that the kids could watch on the weekends and not just for adults. And we did it for students as well. So that being said, we were blessed in a lot of ways. Our offerings and gifts have maintained a pretty consistent level. So we've been extremely blessed, and it's just hard to describe. It's hard to explain. And we just sit here sometimes in awe that some of the things that we did prior to COVID, that God just, made things work and made things happen. So.
Right. Amen. Yeah, the challenges are endless. Sarah, what about during that time, like during talking about lessons learned, were there any learned in the communication field? And, what was the most challenging surprise in that way, if there was any?
Oh, sure. There's a lot, especially the first 2 or 3 weeks, because we kind of re-switched our team a little bit. We started having more team meetings, a full staff meeting of our whole Marcom PR team every Tuesday and Thursday, where we went over everything, including strategy, direction, projects. And then we had to set up sub-teams because all of a sudden our church changed direction. We weren't just online. We created new volunteer opportunities and new events. For example, we were able to get 300,000 N95s from the state of California, and we repaired them. So we had to get volunteers to repair them. We were getting PPE donations. We were putting up programs to feed hospital workers and first responders. And so we had all of these new projects that required marketing and getting the word out to not only the community, the church body, and we also started ramping up our PR. And so much so, since May 1st, we've actually had 86 different television segments or print segments about the church and its projects just since May 1st, which is the most in our history.
Well, we know whose department really is busy. Sounds like Marcom is pretty busy. A lesson learned for us is, well, for me, is that our incident command team that was formed here at the very beginning, not incident command, ICS, as a lot of you know it, but it was just Sean's part of that team, but incident command here at the Rock, where different departments come together and discuss things and try to stay on the same page. But with a lot going on, that can be a challenge too. So if you didn't do that, no matter how small or large your organization, it's maybe a good thing to think about if we shut down again, which may be coming, to form that team at your organization and have that communication going. And you're going to need some decision makers on that team, and from different departments. Like one from each department would probably be great.
Yeah,
Mike,
that's a great point,
I'd like
Mike.
to chime in. Oh, go ahead, Kurt.
That's a great point, Mike, and that's what we saw here at Bayview. Is right. There are different disciplines, if you will, and different perspectives when you want to put together, a path forward. That some folks' lane they see much clearer than folks in other lanes, and it's great to leverage that with multidisciplinary stuff.
All right.
Good. Yeah, I just wanted to add something real quick. So for all the pastors that are out there watching, and just the staff of churches that are out there watching, I would say one thing that we learned that I just want to encourage you with is the idea and the concept of just not being resistant to change and newness. I think we had an online platform as well. It wasn't as robust as maybe some larger churches or larger budgets could maintain, but we had to choose to lean in to those things that certain individuals may be resistant to. And so I would just say during this time, hold your plans like with an open hand. Really just be available to learn and be open to shifting and pivoting as much as possible. That's really what we've learned, and we've had to embrace it.
There you go. Like our pastor says, the church is not the building, right? It's the people. So you got to get your butt up off the couch and go out and where the people are, maybe, and try to change how we do that, and really consider it and know that whatever was normal is probably not going to be normal to us for quite a while. Prayerfully to get back to that. But Dan, while I got you, given the guidelines that came out in May as far as the reopening, I understand that your organization has launched a reopening, which is unique in this environment. But how did your church move forward with that reopening?
Yeah, so that's a loaded question, but let me give you just kind of a quick snapshot. What we did was we got the document that the state of California has kind of outlined for churches and places of worship here in California, which it changes here pretty soon. So, but anyways, we took that and we implemented all the requirements because we want to do our best to honor our city leaders, to honor our state leaders. Politics aside, we needed to do what was right as good humans and as followers of Jesus. And so we implemented all those things. And what we have done is we have jumped into a tentative two-week soft launch where we have invited our volunteer base. And we are working through the challenges and the struggles. We set up our chairs one way last week. It didn't necessarily work, so we're reevaluating and changing. But because we have our volunteers in the room, there's a lot of flexibility there. They kind of know. We have cast vision about here's why we're doing what we're doing. And so we're really trying to sharpen up what we do until we open up for the public, which is potentially here in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Great. And Ariel, could you speak to that at all? You guys talking about reopening or?
Yeah, up until this point, we haven't reopened for our whole church. We did choose to allow our communities to start meeting in person. They meet outdoors and still they wear masks, remain socially distanced, all the guidelines and such. But we are looking to hopefully begin gathering as a whole church July 12th, and that would be outdoors as well. We just decided that our first step was going to be to do as much as we can outside. Our building isn't as big as some others, so the amount of people that we could fit inside safely would significantly limit the amount of people and increase the amount of services we would have to do. So we're trying to do as much as we can outside. So hopefully July 12th will be the date. But like Dan was saying earlier, we're holding all of these plans loosely and even casting that vision from the church. We're like, this is what we're prayerfully going to do, but we cannot make promises.
Yeah, we got to keep.
Nobody saw COVID coming.
Fluid. Sean, what about your organization? And then if we have time, Kurt or Todd go weigh in here too. But what, as far as a limited reopening, what's the Rock doing?
So right now what we're doing is we're not opening to the public. And that's just, bottom line up front right there. What we have done though is we're a larger church and we have a larger staff pool as well. So we're actually doing a soft reopening, if you call it, with our staff. We're trying to figure out how to integrate our staff back into the workplaces effectively and safely. And then from there, monitoring what the state and local guidelines are, we're going to implement a further reopening. And one of the things that I just want to, that I want to really share with everybody that we learned through this incident command that Mike was talking about. We've got tons of knowledge that come into this room, into these meetings. And one of the things that we learned is we were looking at doing potential soft launches and soft reopenings outdoors. And there's a specific set of guidance that has to do with outdoors, like museums, gatherings, and parks and stuff like that. There's a lot that you really have to look into just opening something out in parks or outside of the walls. There's a lot of responsibility that the organization still has in order to implement those social distancing guidelines and best safe practices as well. So we've definitely got a ton of information. I know I saw my email address go out into the chat that I can forward to anybody that has any questions or concerns about that. But yeah, so I guess really the short answer to that question though is we're doing a soft reopening with our staff. And then right now we are planning on a full-blown reopening of our K through 12 school come the second week of August. So right now my team is in the process of figuring out how.
I think we lost Sean for a second, but what I would say is we're looking at, we're going to actually be meeting later today as an organization, discuss reopening the school. Also, the Rock has a preschool that's operated almost through the whole thing because on the different guidelines are really strict processes. There's a summer camp that's going right now that's mostly outdoors. It's operating on a very strict guideline. So the guidelines change. It's a lot in the guidelines, so you need to get it for your state and look at it if there's things you need to keep going. And Todd, what are you guys doing as far as that goes?
Yeah, we did 2 soft reopenings for volunteers and their immediate families only through an RSVP system. We limited it to 100. That gave us the opportunity to train volunteers on what it looks like when we reopen. Our official reopen date will be July 12th, and that's pending Newsom's announcement today, which is our governor, for those of you that don't know. And so that's what we're looking like. We learned a lot, during the soft reopenings. We called it kind of a walkthrough. But by allowing our volunteers to come and do that, we got training out of the way for 1, and for 2, now when we do reopen, on the 12th for our 100 or less that RSVP, we're going to use the same system for them to limit that to 100. Our volunteers will know what to expect. So that'll make it a much better experience for those that begin on July 12th. And we're opening all 4 campuses at the same time, but only Sunday services. So our 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. So we have limited it to that.
Got it. You mentioned training, which may have perked up some areas. We've been able to do some electronically. Our guy, Kevin Johnstone, has been really good with that, with producing that for our team members, even in this time. They can do it from home. Kurt, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically the same model Todd talked about, right? We instead of Sunday services, we'll do our recording sessions, and we will do them like perhaps on a different day of the week. But we took that opportunity to get our volunteer screening team in and walk through the process of admission. And again, it was also reservation based, and it was with known quantities, known entities, right? Relatives of the volunteer team and whatnot. And that let them walk through the process, kind of a dry run through it. We got, again, security online. We kind of overwatch to look at clusters and groups. And then we met afterwards, hot wash, and then rolled in lessons learned, points to improve upon, again, just so that we could shore up the whole system and be ready to hit the ground running, which looks like the ground got a little further away. But, but again, it was just about getting, practice, right? You fight the way you train kind of thing, right? So it was basically very important to get that going.
Yeah, what I see this as, man, you said the runway is moving forward, but it's like a sprint to the starting line. Like every time we try to, we get geared up and get there, and then it moves, right? The starting line gets pushed back a little bit. But we got to, we come to expect that. Sean, I want to come back at you with this one. What equipment did you find the organization needed to stay in compliance with county guidelines?
So the biggest thing,
yeah,
the biggest thing we had to get was hand sanitizer stations, dispensers, and hand sanitizer itself. And then, that was the largest hurdle that we had to overcome in order to, safely launch our campus back open again. The cleaning company the company that we use for all of our cleaning supplies, they've been absolutely awesome, and they've actually kept everything in stock that we needed for sanitizing surfaces and things of that nature. But yeah, it was just the sanitizer dispensers, and then the sanitizer itself were the main things that we really had to focus on.
Okay. Anybody else have any different type of equipment you need to focus on more?
I'd like to chime in on that, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed hand sanitizer as well, but we, again, as a smaller kind of community than the Rock, we had to go all out with, we had to order more stanchions. We had to rethink our signage because our facilities are much smaller than somewhere like the Rock. We got stickers even off of Amazon for everybody keeping like a safe distance. There's so many different things that like we didn't think about, and we just became students of the situation, and we leaned into other churches, just like a lot of you pastors are doing right now in the security conference, is just leaning into others who have kind of gone before you. But we found ourselves in a weird place of trying to find sanitizer, gloves, masks, anything that we could do to set ourselves up for success.
Right. Yeah, it can be difficult to juggle the needs, and like Sean said, you got to give yourself that lead time, because a lot of those things we just can't get. All right, so moving to phase 3, and our last 5 minutes before we start taking questions from, if there's any from our audience. But looking at where we are now from June 15th to now, and we got new guidelines coming out shortly, right? But when we're anticipating what that's going to be, probably less restrictive than not. So in thinking through and looking through that lens, how is your organization seeing continuing in ministry, let's say, meaning encouraging ministry, home groups, some people call them home groups, life groups, small groups, but you get the meaning. So doing that to keep people engaged in the word and in relation in worship. So what are some things we can do to move the ball down the field in that way? And with that, like, when we reopen, we also have to consider being mostly volunteer led, right? Screening, interviewing, getting new people ready to serve. So I don't know who to pick on here. Maybe Todd. It's been a few minutes, but I want to ask you that, Todd. Like, what's your organization doing to encourage people to do that? And then I want to bounce it to Sarah to say what's some effective ways we can roll that out.
So we've been strong encouragers of small groups, and I think I mentioned earlier, I don't remember if I mentioned it in this panel, but we did a survey of our congregation, and we got about 1,600 of those surveys back. And the bottom line was approximately 34% of our people said we'll return with the masks and sanitary practices that are in place, and which means what? 66% said, hey, we're staying online. So what we've done is chosen to encourage our small groups, which we have between 200 and 300 small groups, gather together on a Sunday morning with social distancing and masks, of course, and watch the service online for those that are not quite comfortable coming back into the on-site setting. So that's kind of been a big focus of us at this point.
Okay. Sarah, what are some ways that could be, an organization would go about communicating, encouraging, motivating people toward, to move towards this new change we have?
Well, one of the things we've been doing is pushing our small groups a lot more. We have R groups, which are more study groups, and then we have D groups, which are more disciple groups. In addition to those, this month, we're also launching book clubs, where we've identified 4 different books for people to study, because we're trying just to encourage people to meet on Zoom in a 4 or 6 person small group, or in person if they feel comfortable enough and can stay 6 feet away. But what we're trying to do is glue our congregation with other people for support during these hard times. In addition, we're working with the ministry leaders to try to convert the old way of doing things into an online way of doing things. For example, we have a women's retreat every August. We're converting that to a virtual retreat on a Friday night and Saturday. And some of the hard things to do is, how do you create it so it's going to be interesting? It's going to feel good. It's going to be, people will sign up. What can we do that's different? Are we going to have drawings? Are we going to have, special things for them to print out? Is it going to be a vibe? Whatever it is. But we're trying to convert things online and really delve into what do people want these days. We're doing the same thing with the Rock School of Ministry online classes, the Rock Financial Life online. And so we're having to push things more through our social media platforms, actually. And so we've had to create our own social media brand guidelines just for consistency within the church and ministries and campuses. And so that's new.
Right.
Yeah, and if I could piggyback on that, one of the things here at Bayview, one of the Bayview products that we're proud of is the praise and worship side of the house, right? The singing side of it, and how we realized that is really a good product of getting the Lord into these other areas and venues. So we really put a lot of emphasis on getting that worship part of it you know, the word is definitely very filling, but getting that worship experience out to our little new denomination, right? Church of God on Couch, right? Is basically to kind of get it into the households and get the folks really connected via that route.
Yeah, those are really important things, and worship is definitely huge and a challenge to, it can be a challenge to get out electronically. And I know that here at the Rock, our worship teams have been working tirelessly trying to, keep things moving, keep it interesting, changing the venues, what that they're doing recordings at. They're all used to, just like all of our organizations used to doing it live, right? So how does that happen? And that's actually was one of our organizational challenges, which is my the final question for one of the final questions for this is, Sean mentioned about soft reopenings, and right now we're doing, part of that is having production critical staff come in, and which encompasses more than just a worship team, but production critical is like Sarah's team, doing anything related to marketing, communications, Sean's team, the safety team to some point, some other teams I'm not mentioning, but how do we, with across different facilities and hours and needs, how do we really facilitate that? And we find that there's some big challenges we have with that. With access control and screening coming in, and having people adhere to rules and regulations. So those are some challenges we face. Now, I want to ask the obvious question as we wind down here. I only see we have a few questions in the Q&A section I'm going to look at in a minute, but last question for this team at this point is, should we be preparing for another shutdown given a current trend in cases in California? That's the obvious question here.
I think so, yes.
Absolutely.
100% agree. We need to be prepared for that.
And are there any hard lessons learned? Like, will we do anything different, or are we already prepared to shut down based on our experience so far?
One thing we saw on the first shutdown, and someone mentioned the PPP program. Here at Bayview, we have a really great operations officer, Pastor Brown, and he was at the forefront of making sure that we got the funding, or that we had these systems in place, and that we had relationships with other churches that we could actually work with to basically get them up and running also if they ran into problems. So forming those coalitions, not just within your religious institution, but across other institutions to help them out, the smaller ones or the more disadvantaged ones, ahead of time, to basically be ready should another shutdown occur, to help them along.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for all the contributions today, team. We got a couple of questions coming in, and here's one. How well have volunteers responded to getting back to serving? And you mentioned the survey, Todd. Has anyone else done that? I know here at the Rock we have too. Anyone else other than the Rock done that? Yeah,
we sent out a survey. We got people's kind of advice and opinions and things like that. As a good leader does, we listen to our people, but we don't necessarily just follow, our people. We want to do our best to hear them out and make the best decision possible. But what we have done is we have opened up other avenues. We didn't really necessarily take a view of this as like, okay, we need to react. It's like, this is an opportunity for us to find opportunities to empower our volunteers to go out into the community. We have a food distribution as well that happens a couple times a month, and we actually do home deliveries of some of those meals. And we just took the opportunity to ramp that up. And so those who we knew had a heart to serve, even in the midst of everything that was unknown with COVID, we encouraged them get plugged in with our outreach ministries. And so we've actually seen our volunteer teams thrive because they're wanting to serve. They're looking for ways to serve. And so we did our best to kind of become like that conduit for them, and we found other opportunities for them. And so we've seen people respond very well. And as I said, very gracious as we're doing these soft openings.
Well, Dan, I'm gonna put you on the spot here since you mentioned outreach. So how do you screen people that, like, if I wanted to do outreach at your church and go serve groceries to the community, I'm assuming deliver it to doorsteps. Is there a screening process? And Sean, the second part of that question would be for you. what screening process do you employ for people that are coming to the building currently? So Dan, first on outreach.
Yeah, absolutely. So for all of our volunteers, we do, as soon as they come in, we make that it's required for them to wear a mask, to wear gloves. We take their temperature. And then when home deliveries are being made, we leave the groceries at the front door and notify the home, whether it's a knock on the door, a text message, something like that. So we're observing social distancing. We also have created kind of like a sanitation station, if you will, where we kind of more face masks, more gloves, more hand sanitizer, all those different things. So we're doing our best to create a healthy environment and an expectation that, hey, even though you've got a hard to serve, maybe your personal view is you don't want to wear a mask. That's
Right.
Okay. That's your personal view. But if you want to serve here, this is what we're asking you to do. So,
Which can be a challenge, but at church,
absolutely.
they hopefully will be complying at church at least, if not at Target, right? So
Yeah, and it's really casting the vision too. Sorry to interrupt there, Mike, but it's really just casting the vision that we let them know. Look, this is not a political thing. Whether you think this or think that, we're really trying to do our best to serve those around us and protect the health and wellness of others.
right on. And Sean, what about visitors coming to the building currently? What type of screening?
So right now here at the Rock, we've got a very
Sean froze again. So I will fill in the gap and say what we do here at the Rock is we have people coming in at multiple exits. We have one building mostly.
sign in.
Sean, we lost you, so I took over for you. Sorry, you froze.
Okay.
I was up to the point we have one entrance at our main campus. If you want to take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we got that controlled access, and then once they come through the funnel, there's a series of the 4 questions.
All right, so it looks like we need IT in Sean's office. Sorry, buddy. They come into their main lobby. They're literally funneled by a physical channel to one point, which is where our uniform security is. Sorry, Sean. And then that security officer at whatever site is open. We have one other site is open for limited hours also for critical staff, but they get screened just like Dan already described. Temperature check. You ask the questions, they can answer yes to any of the questions. Gotta go. So sad. Too bad. See you next time. If the temperature is hot and it's hot out, they got to go outside, sit down, cool off for 10, 15 minutes, come back, try again. If it's over 101, got to go. So sad. Too bad. Come back when you're feeling better. We can pray for them too. So another question we have from Ron Allen. It says, have you considered a more restrictive early service requiring a mask, social distance, and limited contact, or a later service that is less restrictive? I'll flip that to Todd.
Yeah, our policy right now is pretty much following whatever guidelines that the state, the feds, and local county has put into place. So for us, we're doing a 9 and an 11 on Sunday morning starting on July 12th, but our procedures and policies will be identical for every campus, regardless of the service that you go to. So our restrictions will apply to everyone equally. And what we've done through our online services is use that as kind of getting information out to people so that when we do reopen, they're prepared for mandatory masks, mandatory, temperature checks. We will have a nurse station available for the first 2 full weekends at each service. If somebody's temperature is higher than 100.0, we can send them over there. They can get another check as well as ask questions and things like that, just to make sure that we've done our due diligence before we say, hey, we got to ask you to go home and watch online for a week or 2.
Got it. A wise old man, will flip this one to you in a minute, Ariel, but a wise young man on this call who probably doesn't have a good internet connection, Sean, once told me on an IC call that we're using the word face masks, but really we need a face covering, right? So let's keep that in context. But Ariel, as far as your organization, would you be providing that PPE equipment, face mask, covering, whatever you want to call it? Would you be providing that? This is a question that came in for your congregants, or would they be expected to bring their own, or would there be a mix of either?
Yeah, we're definitely encouraging people to bring their own, but as an extra precaution, we have purchased some as well to hand out to those who may have forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're encouraging people to bring their own.
Mm-hmm. And Sarah, how can, I mean, is that something that can be relayed, somehow communicated beforehand? What would be like a really simple, effective way for any size church to do that?
Yes, we're doing that. We've made plans to start preparing verbiage about it, through email blasts, and also some graphic images just to show what we're going to be requiring online. So we've been looking at a different staged approach of how we're going to ramp up how we communicate to our congregation. And we're just going to use simple images and make it interesting and try to get their attention.
Okay.
Just real quick to add to that, we found what's worked best for our congregation. We have been doing a lot of video updates. I'm not sure, depending on your church sizes, if that works, but we're actually putting out weekly updates, and a lot of what, like Dan has been coming back to, a lot just comes down to casting vision, setting expectations, and just even reiterating a lot of the same things. So every week we put out a new update of like, this is what this week has been, this is what looking forward is going to look, what we're thinking. And that's been super helpful for our people.
Well, that's great. And we still got a couple of questions coming in, but I've been told to wrap it up. That's a wrap, folks. Hey, look, I appreciate everybody, all you panelists, for all of your time and your feedback and your love to share information with people watching. So thank you so much. Again, I'm Mike Diggs. This is a panel, and we thank you for attending the webinar.
Life is precious, and it can be put at risk in an unexpected instant. Disasters don't come with warnings. Therefore, it's up to us to be prepared ahead of time. We have to gather knowledge and have the foresight and planning necessary to navigate dangerous conditions. We have to act immediately and respond in real time to life-saving information, because emergencies can escalate at a moment's notice. Because staying informed can be the first step to staying safe and saving your life and the lives of others. Every life is worth saving, and everyone deserves to be safe. Cutting response time significantly, mitigating liability and danger, and minimizing loss can be a titan of a task. Disasters don't come with warnings, so we must come prepared. Titan HST, because good enough is not good enough when it comes to life.
Hi, I'm Philip Kazan. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO at Verkada. At Verkada, we're building the world's best video security system. What that means is no NVRs, no DVRs, just a software-driven solution that delivers modern security to your building. Let me show you how it works. When you log into Verkada Command, you'll see one single dashboard where you can view all of your cameras all around the world. What's amazing about this dashboard is it works on any device. So if you're on your tablet on the go, you can view your cameras and monitor the situation. All of this works with no network configuration, so you don't have to worry about logging into VPNs or setting up firewall rules to make the system work. When you zoom in on the map, you'll see a floor plan, and on this floor plan, all of your cameras will be laid out within your building. Clicking through any one of them will pull up the live video. So let's take a look at that. Here we can see one of the cameras that's outside of our office in San Mateo looking at the street. You can see the cars driving by and people walking by, and that's really what that live view up top of the page is about. Now, as I scroll down the page, what you'll see is a history view of the camera, which captures everything that the camera has recorded, and we store up to 120 days of that history. What's awesome about the history view is that it's broken down into hourly chunks. And so for any given point in time, I can hover my mouse and move it from left to right to see everything that was happening at that exact point in time. It's a very, very easy way to browse the camera's history and find out about the incidents that occurred. Now, we wanted to actually take it a step further, and so with that, we introduced motion search. I can scroll back up to the top of the page and highlight any region of the frame to find out exactly what happened at that spot. So for example, if I highlight the crosswalk in this scene here, I will instantly get results of all the cars and people that crossed through the spot that I highlighted. What's awesome about this is I can also set alerts to be notified about any activity in any particular region. Let's switch gears a little bit and take a look at one of the cameras in our office. Imagine you wanted to see everyone who've entered and exited your space. For this, we've developed a feature called face search. With face search, you can pull up a list of the individual faces of people entering or exiting a camera's view. So as I scroll down the page now, I can see everyone who's appeared in frame. If I click on Scott, I can now pull up all the times where Scott entered and exited the frame. Last but not least, I wanted to show you just how easy it is to share access to any Verkada camera in real time. With just a click of a button, you can send an SMS message with a link that gives temporary access to any number of users in the world. On the receiving end, it's just a link. You can pull it up on your phone, view live video, browse the history, and in emergency situations, respond in real time. If you have any questions, or if you'd like a free trial, please contact us at sales@verkada.com. Thanks for watching.
Hey guys, my name is Robert Russell and I'm one of the creators of pastorstoolbox.com. I also have the privilege of serving as worship pastor at a church here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And just like you, I cannot wait for the church doors to be opened again. It is an interesting time, and I believe the way that we handle the next few months matter. I believe the ultimate way to care for people is to develop a plan. You know, when it comes to technology, it used to be an option, but now it's necessary. And at Pastor's Toolbox, we believe that technology is going to continue to play an important role for the faith community. And that inspired this idea of an RSVP system. We call it our Save a Seat tool. It's a customizable RSVP software that enables faith leaders to control, measure, and communicate capacity. The Save a Seat software is designed with simplicity in mind. It's user-friendly for the church leader and the churchgoer. Both of those are important. The tool generates a unique link for each place of worship to share across social media platforms and embed on their websites. It's such a neat tool. And you know what? It scales. Depending on the size of your congregation, church leaders have the ability to offer reservations to multiple campuses, services, days of the week, different service times, and even it allows for capacity management with overflow venues. So for large churches, small churches that have overflow options, this is a tool for you. You know, one click places the attendee in the reservation process. Attendees receive a confirmation for every request, and because life happens, the confirmation has a cancel reservation option, which immediately frees up their spot for someone else. We believe in this tool. Our belief is that this tool will help the church gather again with the same regard that has been given to social distancing. We need to take this seriously. You know, and we need to have a plan. Strategy is an act of love. Regulating capacity will be a continued measure to respect government requests and keep our faith community safe. Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you know someone that needs to see this video, go ahead and send it to them. We want all churches to hear about this. We believe this is instrumental in the church gathering safely.
Radio service, radio check.
Bearcom is always on. All day, every day, our products, solutions, and associates are always on and can be counted on to serve our customers' needs. As North America's largest distributor of wireless voice, data, and video solutions for business, education, and public safety applications, Bearcom delivers the right wireless solution for every environment. We design and deploy solutions that improve efficiency and boost productivity while adding safety and security to over 16,000 customers across the US and Canada. Bearcom serves customers from multiple locations across North America, as well as from its state-of-the-art 96,000 square foot headquarters located in Garland, Texas. From this facility, Bearcom programs, kits, and distributes over 49,000 sales orders per year with a 98% accuracy, and maintains a product inventory of nearly 15,000 items in our warehouse to reduce back orders and better serve our customers. Additionally, Garland serves as Bearcom's national repair depot and the distribution hub for over 30,000 push-to-talk rental devices, including over 2,000 extended push-to-talk devices. This rental inventory supports the nation's largest festivals, television award shows, and professional sporting events, satisfying over 16,000 customers annually. Bearcom headquarters also supports a network operations center, which remotely monitors key customer sites for system disturbances, allowing service technicians to be quickly dispatched to avoid costly delays. Bearcom has unmatched North American resources and local presence in most major cities, with branch locations ranging from Alberta to Toronto in Canada and from New York to Los Angeles in the US. This breadth of coverage allows Bearcom to locally serve our customers with customized end-to-end solutions and the highest levels of service. With a national field service team of over 165 trained and certified technicians, Bearcom can manage sophisticated public safety, petrochemical, and manufacturing solutions to routine break-fix repairs for any customer. At Bearcom, when jobs and lives are on the line, you can trust us to provide wireless solutions and services that keep everyone connected, improve productivity, and deliver a greater sense of security every time. Bearcom, always on.
Our world today requires video security everywhere. City streets, hospitals, school campuses. Security operators are faced with an overwhelming amount of information, and knowing what is most important is becoming more and more difficult. Avigilon is here to make security easier and more effective, so you can protect people and businesses. We provide security solutions for each step of the way to help you build an integrated system that can connect the dots before you do to help ensure critical events don't go unnoticed. From technology that tells you when something isn't right, to ultra-high definition cameras that can see more even in extremely challenging conditions, to video management software that can search for someone with a click of a button, and access control systems that allow you to instantly lock down an area to make it more secure. Our products and technology work together to make security more efficient. Avigilon is proud to be made in America with local expertise and globally sourced materials. Through our integrations with Motorola Solutions, our products and technologies leverage the critical communication networks that those working on the front lines rely on day in and day out, helping you to act quickly from the time an emergency call is placed until after an incident is resolved. In a world full of information, our attention is a scarce resource. But with Avigilon Solutions, you can focus on protecting what matters most.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. If you joined us for the first panel discussion we had, we got our same guest back. Thanks for rejoining us to the distinguished panel here. All experts in their respective area of what we're going to be discussing today. And what we talked about, if you didn't see the last panel, was about a shutdown, basically, how we do church and community in this COVID-19 era. And now we want to talk about moving forward in the community. Prior, we talked about the 3 phases of the initial shutdown, the partial reopening, and the phase we're under now, which is a slightly more liberal reopening. and then what's to come next. That's what we don't know. We're waiting for the governor of California to tell us what we're going to do. And in the last panel, we all agree collectively, I believe, that we feel like we're leaning in a direction of having another shutdown, and be prepared for that. You know, that being said, we have to be prepared on how to move forward in the community or in ministry. And that's what we're going to talk about in this next segment. So I want to introduce our panel to you today. First, we have Ariel Dortch, children's pastor from Park Hill Church here in San Diego. We have Sean Morrison, our facilities manager from the Rock Church here in San Diego. We have Daniel Inglese. Hi, Daniel. He's a Sunday services and teaching pastor at Grace Church here in San Diego. We have Kurt Garian, security lead, Bayview Baptist Church, San Diego, California. And we have Todd Queeler. He's not San Diego. Todd is a security director at the High Desert Church in Victorville. And Sarah Polk. She's in our Marcom, or Marketing and Communications Department /PR here at the Rock in San Diego. And you have me, your host for today, Mike Diggs, safety director here at the Rock Church, also San Diego. A lot of San Diego today. So what we're talking about again is moving forward in the community or ministry. So I want us to just, kick some ideas, some thoughts around, maybe share what our organization is doing. So how do we, talking about not being able to do church in church, and in most cases, the church not being a building, but being a community that we serve. So how did your organization pivot to do an outreach strategy to serve the community during this pandemic? And Dan, you started sharing a little bit about that prior, so I'm gonna start with you. What are you guys doing to pivot to do that?
Yeah, pivot has really just become like our new keyword here. So we are, as I said before, if you caught the first half of this, we talked about how we are going out into our community a lot more. We have ramped up our home delivery service of like meals to those who are underprivileged, to those who are shut-ins, maybe those who are immune compromised and can't leave. We've really ramped that up. As far as some of our other areas of ministry, we have really had to try a few different things. We've provided kids ministry. We've done like a drive-through prayer event where everybody observed social distancing. We had families of the church come in. We prayed for them from a distance. We've done everything from exercise groups to just different online experiences, different in-person experiences. And really, we're landing on some different things that are working for us in regards to our children's ministry, our youth ministry. We really are in a season of like trying to just be innovative with everything that we do. And I heard somebody say this, and it's really kind of relevant to all of us right now. We're in a season of really just kind of throwing darts at a dartboard and hoping something sticks. But we're doing it with intentionality, and we're trying to figure out what's really going to work for some of our people because they're craving community.
And being intentional is a key word there and all of that, right? So, Kurt, what kind of strategy are you guys deploying to try to speak to the community more during the pandemic? I think you're on mute, Kurt. Let me see if I can unmute you.
I should be okay. Am I good now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So here at Bayview, we have a community market. Foodstuffs, right? It's basically like a regular supermarket, but pared down in miniature. But we have produce aisles, canned foods, freezer section. And so that was already in place for the, for the underprivileged community. Well, this pandemic has really widened that scope. And so we've seen a lot more traffic on campus. And, it just put the onus upon us to really make this a safe environment. As I said earlier, our aim here from security perspective is to be a no vector zone. So anyone who visits here, from our serving community to our volunteers, make this a safe place to serve the community, for our staff to come in and do their daily work. And that's really been the real trick in the whole thing is to basically keep this a safe area of operations, even as we do outreach work.
Man, what I'm hearing is Bayview is very safety oriented organization. That's good. That's keeping people healthy.
Absolutely.
I want to pivot that a little bit. Next one to Sean, to say, Sean, you know, one of the many hats you wore for your organization during this shutdown and partial shutdown was community projects. And I know Sarah can speak to that as well later, but what kind of community projects did your organization get involved in?
So initially, as soon as the COVID happened, the largest project that we had the opportunity, we partnered with the County of San Diego to retrofit and rehab a little over 300,095 masks. And that was a gigantic undertaking. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but it took us about 7 weeks, I believe, to complete the 300,000 masks. But it was a great opportunity to be able to just pay it forward to the community. And also, one of the unique things that we were able to do is we got special permission from the county in order to host this event inside of one of our buildings. And that specific project really, I think, helped jumpstart us in the reopening and through this entire COVID process, because it gave us an opportunity to really get to know what the protocol was for screening and how to do it, and how to start using our internal systems. We use Brushfire for our event scheduling, utilizing those platforms that we had to pay for to work to our advantage in the season that, that we weren't able to, actually utilize them the way that they were intended to be used. So that was one of the huge projects. And then we had numerous other events that were going on. We were feeding first responders, which was a huge one. And then doing some grocery distribution projects and things of that nature out in the community. So we've had the opportunity to really partner with the county on multiple occasions, multiple levels, to really still spread the hope and take church outside the walls. Like Pastor Miles says, is church isn't the building, church is the people, church is the community, and we are just blessed to be able to continue church in that aspect.
Mm-hmm. We also did some collecting of PPE and different locations and deliver it to I don't know who it was delivered to, the city, the county, state, I'm not sure, but we were blessed to be able to do that. And by first responders, a lot of people view that differently. Being a prior first responder, I view that as police and fire. I've now broadened my scope to understand that is frontline workers. That is hospital workers, that is in some cases like grocery store workers, and people that have to go to work anyway. We had a contingent of police officers and firefighters that were quarantined in downtown San Diego. They had potential exposure, that were literally being fed, brought over food from the jail, which, okay, it's not ideal. It's food. If you've ever had it or seen it, that's not really on the top of the list. So the department reached out to me, had some contacts with the police, and said, hey, are you able to bring some of those feedings over to our quarantine guys that are receiving county food? So we were able to do that. Sean was involved in that as well, and that's been really cool. Since we're continuing that, we're still delivering meals to different police agencies around San Diego. So we're blessed to be able to do that. Sarah, could you speak to that a little bit? Maybe I'm not covering something that some other organizations were doing or that we've done.
And some of these ideas might be things other smaller churches could do too, but we did set up a shopper program too, where we could actually send volunteers out to shop for the elderly and help them get medical resources and things like that. We also set up a group to sew homemade masks. That's going well. We also set up a lot of kids projects and put them online and linked them to our website, so that parents with children at home that are desperate to find some things for them to do would have resources. And we didn't have that on our site before. We also set up donating blood locations. We worked with the Red Cross and two different blood organizations to gather blood for several weeks, and got the word out to the community. And we also set up a program to help the food bank, the San Diego Food Bank, and giving people ideas for where they could drop off the food. And then we set up we've got more of a promotion for our prison ministry, setting up pen pal programs so that people could communicate with people in prison now, and yes, people who are isolated too. And then we have set up a volunteer Facebook group just so our volunteers have more of a platform to keep in touch. And we're continuing to add new initiatives. It's almost like every week we're adding more things as we can get more volunteers set up. So we're always looking for donations and volunteers to get some of these programs rolling.
Mm-hmm. And as we talk, since we're talking moving forward in the community and taking ministry outside of our walls to serve in the ways we've already talked about, Ariel, is there any ways that your organization has moved in that direction? Or did you guys trying to move in that direction?
Yeah, a lot of what you guys have already said are things that we're doing as well, different things with food distribution and continuing to support financially some of these different outreach things that we've done, including even there's a ministry that houses people who have been sex trafficked and things like that. So even as simple as we've sent people out to do yard work because that's something that they could do safely. So they've taken like their family only and done yard work outside and not actually interacted with people, doing things like that. And then honestly, we're trying to take advantage of the time we have now and even look forward. Like there are a lot of different theories out there about how long this virus is going to last, but like, okay, what does next summer look like? And we're attending trainings now to hopefully be able to do a summer camp for foster kids, but who knows what will happen. But really just taking advantage of the time we have now is like, okay, what will VBS look like, if at all? And trying to figure out those different outreach things for 2021 or possibly 2022.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? Hey, Todd, is there anything that, it sounds like we're all doing similar things to that respect. Is there anything that your church is doing up in Victorville to speak to, doing more in the community during this time?
Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we've done a thing called Backyard Blast, which is going to people's backyards while they have, either a Bible study or some type of a game or something like that, recording that, making that available for our children's ministries. We partnered with the Red Cross and scheduled 3 blood drives, which we've already completed 2. The last one, we opened it up and the Red Cross said, look, if you give blood, we'll automatically do the antibody testing for you. So that encouraged a few more people to do that. And then we repurposed some of our volunteers to do a couple of things. One was doing some grocery shopping for some of our elderly in our congregation. And the other was making phone calls to all elderly people. So since the closure started, roughly for us was mid-March when we shut down, we call our elderly people in our congregation weekly to check in with them and make sure that they're okay. That has been an unbelievable ministry. The feedback that we've gotten from our elderly is just off the charts with appreciation for what we've done for them. So another blessing in and of itself by repurposing. I think Kirk talked about repurposing some of your volunteers. And so that's where we've benefited there.
Sounds awesome. Can anybody speak to expanding on any community partnerships that you had during this time that haven't been discussed? For example, someone in our organization has been reaching out to restaurants. Some have reached out to us to say, hey, can we partner with you, or we want to partner with you to help, come alongside you and bring meals to the community, to seniors or to first responders on all levels.
Yeah, definitely, Mike. So here at Bayview, again, we have the market store, but we also leverage some relationships with the food bank and other outside food distribution services to get any of their excess goods, funneled over to this community. And so for today, for example, this Wednesday, I think it's the Wednesday of each week, we set up the distribution drive-through, and the community gets to drive through, and basically, they stay in their car and we just load in a serving of, there's pasta and there's chips and dips and things like that. But again, that's leveraging a relationship with some outside distributors to get some of their food and basically get it targeted to areas of need. So that has proven to be pivotal this time.
Yeah, I don't know how this happened, but our organization also got money from the city of El Cajon to specifically to purchase groceries for the community and to do a drive, like a drive. You said drive-through. Kirk reminded me of that, and we've done that several times. We got one going in San Marcos even this week, and then there's been several in El Cajon. And when you go out and see that, it's amazing. And Sarah, maybe you could speak to this point. Is a lot of times the media, Sarah's department will reach out to the media and say, hey, can you provide coverage? And sometimes that's looked at in a negative way by the community because saying, hey, you're just looking for attention. Well, no, the goal is to let people know, number one, that we care and that we do love and want to reach out to them. And we do know that there's people hurting. There's 40 some million people out of work. How can they not be people hurting, right? So people watching right now may be out of work and hurting. But the main purpose is to perpetuate ministry, because through the exposure that Sarah's department is able to get for the Rock, we have donors come and say, hey, I want to give 20,000, 40,000 to that cause specifically. I want it all earmarked to go toward buying groceries to give away. So Sarah, maybe you could speak to our viewers about why it's good to seek media attention for your event. It's not self-serving.
Well, at the very beginning of the shutdown, we set up some of these volunteer programs I've mentioned and Sean has mentioned. And because of that, we wanted to get the word out to the community about what we were doing to help with N95 masks, food distribution, the hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. So we did do a lot of press releases, a lot of calls, a lot of things to pitch the news teams. And actually, after the first 3 weeks of doing that, we were doing so many outreach activities in the community, we were able to leverage that into our own television show on Fox every Sunday for 16 weeks, showing outreach activities. So instead of having a news press, we're actually doing a Sunday show now, and it's actually featuring some of those outreach activities we're doing with the call to action slides so that people in the community that want to get involved to volunteer, or they want to donate, or they want to learn more about it can do it. And it's a regular TV show instead of just a press coverage. And that has really allowed us to expand our church's ministry outside just the walls of our church and outside our regular audience in San Diego, because we realize now we've got donors now from across the country and from other places because they've seen some of these things. And it's really helped spread the word. We've gotten more salvations, more people interested in certain things. We're able to track some of those metrics and realize what an impact it's having.
Yeah, and talk about Kingdom Impact, just the fact that some of that exposure has led to a lot more viewership online, to the point where Easter weekend, it was over 200,000 people that were watching.
Right.
And that, forget the numbers on who watched, but the numbers on those that are looking for a deeper relationship with Christ has grown exponentially. Mm-hmm. And that's really the goal. So thanks for speaking to that, Sarah. Appreciate it. Question of the hour. Where do you see our places of worship going post-COVID? I'm gonna pose that to Todd.
Well, I think we will slowly, at least for, just speaking for up here in the high desert where we're at, I think we will see people begin to come back, but they'll begin to come back slowly. With the survey that we did, 34% of the people want to come back right away, but I think the other 66% will see some of those come back. But I also believe there's a good number of people that enjoy being home on a Sunday morning, eating breakfast and watching the service online. Because another thing that came out in our survey was there was more volunteers that were willing to come back and serve, but not attend. In other words, they'll still watch online at home, but they're willing to come in with the mask and protocols in place to serve at a live service. So even though they want to be at home online, they're still willing to come in and serve. So we're probably going to see it start to come back, but I think it's going to be really slow for us, just speaking for us.
Yeah, and if I might piggyback on that, and that's what we're seeing also. And Todd hit the nail on the head. We realized a new venue almost out of necessity. It used to be that the streaming service was the backup. But you know, we're really getting outstanding response, both on the feedback and the giving side of it. And we're almost generating a new denomination, right? Church of God on Couch, you know, but folks are really dialed into it. And it's really a new, new horizon for service.
Yeah, looks like we lost Dan. I don't know if he'll make it back, but we thank Dan for his time joining us. Ariel, what do you think about that? Where do you see the church going? I know you're a children's pastor, and you know that's difficult enough in itself when you can be in-house, you know, to keep that segment engaged and interested and moving forward. Now doing that electronically, looking at the new era in church, at least for the short term. Where do you see that going post-COVID? Do you see new fun ways of doing that, or you think that that's going to be more and more difficult to do?
Yeah, I think COVID has shown us kind of what we're capable of. I think a lot of people have had to rally and get creative and come up with ways to engage our churches that we hadn't been doing in the past. So I think some of that is going to stay. And I think that there's definitely this other aspect of church that people are longing for, to return to whatever normal looks like. So figuring out how to do that safely. It's hard to know what post-COVID is going to look like. Like, what of these regulations are just now forever?
Right.
This is how it's going to be, and what's actually going to kind of fade away in regards to like kids ministry. I mean, we've already purchased air filters or air purifiers for each class. Like, that's just going to be a new forever thing. There's just who can really know. But we're just taking it as it comes.
I got you. And Sean, given you know, we're talking about moving outside of the walls and you know, home grouping more, and you know, potentially children and youth in the same neighborhoods getting together in bigger numbers to watch online services. What kind of precautions would you have like homeowners take?
So I mean, one of the big things, and not necessarily just homeowners, but churches in general, even now in this season, as we get ready to reopen, we just navigated through this as a church. Right now, the U.S. is still under quarantine. It's, you know, most state and local governments are still issuing a mandatory home quarantine, and which means that when you're at home, you're at home. You're not supposed to have anybody over. You're not supposed to be meeting with R groups, D groups, community groups, whatever you call them. So I would encourage churches out there to really be cautious of how they market it and approach and encourage people to meet outside the walls of the church. You can meet in a public park and, you know, maintain social distancing, maintain things of those nature. But as soon as you encourage somebody to meet inside the walls of their house as an organization, that organization now becomes liable if something happens, if there's an outbreak of community spread or anything like that. So I just want to encourage everybody with that to really just be careful with the way they're using their wording and how they encourage their congregation to meet. But I mean, ultimately, you know, with the survey that we did as a church, the survey showed that everybody wants to come back to church, but nobody's in a hurry to come back to church right now. You know, I think 80% of our congregants said that they want to come back to church, but they're not going to come back until some of the guidelines are lifted. And they're absolutely not going to come back without safety protocols put in place, whether that's a face covering, whether that's hand sanitizer stations or social distancing, whatever it is. So yeah, everybody wants to come back, but nobody's in a hurry to come back right now in this season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know what, Mike? You know, when someone earlier in the session asked about how to manage volunteers, when, you know, you have your volunteers fold back in, it's that same mindset, you know, I think, you know, from Sean, is whether you're talking about home worship, you know, a group work, you have to have a system in place that's going to take responsibility. Yes. If you have volunteers come to your location to hand out food, you got to have a system in place to protect them and your, you know, and the congregants or the folks that drive through. And, you know, you have to have a process in place for any group worship and what the stipulations and limitations are. because yeah, this could definitely backfire. You want to be smart about it.
All right, Kirk, you stole my thunder on the next question, but it was directed at you anyway. Trick's on you. I want to ask you to expound on that a little bit as far as just from a safety perspective, like where you have an explosion of home groups going on, right?
Right.
How would you encourage, like what measures would you encourage the home groups to take to stay safe, not only from the virus, but from other things that could affect the safety when we open up to people we don't know necessarily?
Absolutely. You know, and one of the things, you know, even before the virus, right, like pre-pandemic, right, or BC, before COVID, you know, we had our impact study groups, what we call them here at Bayview, and you know, and the emphasis was on you really want to, you know, the great thing about small groups is, right, they get to really you're more familiar with smaller pockets of folks, right? And you can call in people that you don't know and they can fold into it. But there has to be an air of common sense about it. You know, you want to have it at reasonable times of the day, not too late at night and things like that. To consider transit there and back. You know, if they're single people or folks, you escort them to, if they have to walk a block to their car, you make sure that, you know, you got them there in one piece, you get them out in one piece. And of course the pandemic only, you know, intensifies it because again, we don't recommend physical small group meetings, right, outside of a communal pod. And that just goes without saying, and that's what Sean pointed out. But the other side of just the physical security of folks from different backgrounds, the fact that you don't know that well, is to basically kind of, you know, definitely keep an eye on everyone from their car and back, and make sure they leave in one piece.
I think what's important to remember, those are good points. What's important to remember also is that if I'm inviting someone into my home, they don't necessarily know because I'm on a signed to be a group leader on a church database, right? And then by zip code and default, someone comes to my home to attend the small group. I got a lot of concerns with that. So privacy, I don't want people walking to my master bedroom. I don't want people in my, you know, certain areas of my house. Okay, so maybe setting those expectations when people come in. Okay, these are areas we're going to be in, living room, dining room, kitchen, here's the bathroom. Other than that, everything else is off limits, as well as if someone, and we've had this happen here at the Rock, if someone's being inappropriate in some way in your home, then it's your home. It's okay to not invite them back. We'll let them know they're not invited back, you know, and do that safely. But I would recommend people not continually allow someone that's being inappropriate into their home. So that's just to add to what you were saying. Todd, as far as home groups are concerned, I think people are going to do that anyway, regardless of when the state says, hey, we don't want you to go to church. We don't want you to meet in groups in your home. I think people are going to do a portion of that anyway, because, you know, God designed us to be in community, right? So that being said, the groups in homes that, not saying your church is putting their name behind it necessarily, but what are some guidelines you would say homes should follow to keep as safe as possible as far as, you know, the health aspect of it?
Yeah, well, now that, you know, the governor has put, you know, the stay-at-home orders back in place, I haven't heard any change at this point from our senior leadership on whether they're going to stop that. But when we agreed to go ahead and allow small groups to meet in homes again, it was the same policies and procedures that we have for our volunteers and or staff members that are back to work, because we only have about 50% of our staff at work, and that's face coverings, social distancing, you know, minimum 6 feet, that whole thing. So I think as long as they're, you know, abiding by what we have said as a staff, and we've created documents in order that they can have that the church has come up with for them to read through. So I think as long as they're abiding by that, like I said, with the new stay-at-home order, I haven't heard the latest yet on whether we're still going to be allowing that. But just a little side note, I just saw the governor's closures again, and churches is not on that list. I can't guarantee that. That might be good news for us, but it does not look like he's saying churches will need to reclose, but he's reclosed a whole list of other things. But anyway, hopefully that answered the question.
It did, and it spoke to staff and home groups. And Sarah, what do you think the most effective way is to relay that messaging to staff at your organization, as well as your attendees? To introduce teams, let's say, sorry.
Well, our HR team has done a good job of sending a mass email blast to staff as soon as any new guidelines are announced, including links for more information. In addition, we put notices on Workplace, which is kind of our staff Facebook area, so that people see that. So I think our team has done a good job of communicating that. And in addition, all of the department managers kind of review it, I think, in their weekly meetings, or at least ours do. We go over those new guidelines and things that are changing and answer questions to the team, you know, the staff that are asking questions. We also have had more frequent all church staff meetings where we've got, you know, 130, 140 people on a Zoom call. And we've had those quite a bit, very frequently, every couple of weeks or so. And that allows the whole team to get the message too and to ask questions. So I think that's helped improve communications and you know, make sure people get things on a timely basis.
Mm-hmm. And that meeting even happened today while we were on this call. So
yep.
At the missed staff meeting today. I'm sorry. At the missed staff meeting today. Sad about that. Ariel, when we get back to doing church, worshiping, if and when we're able to reopen with less than ideal capacity allowances, inevitably, you're gonna face. What are some things you guys are talking through to make that happen?
Yeah, a lot of the people we've heard from, and things that have already been said to, even in this discussion, there are so many different, people are feeling so many different ways. So there's some who they're saying a year from now, like, I'm still planning to be at home. And some that are revving to go and ready to come back now. So in regards to like capacity, mm-hmm. It's been interesting to hear from our people who are like, oh, some of these things that we thought we'd have to worry about, oh, how do we limit the amount of people that can come in and do these things? Some people just don't plan on coming. But yeah, there's been a lot of discussions about when we are allowed to offer kids classes, what will that look like? And a lot of that's going to be dependent on what school systems are doing and the different precautions they have in place. And in regards to our main gathering, will socially distance be this new forever thing, or will some of that be taken back in? So yeah, a lot of discussions have happened. It's hard to actually land on this is what we're going to do, because it feels like every week the guidelines change. And so we've talked about a lot of different scenarios, but it's a waiting game, mm-hmm. honestly.
So fair to say, when we open to the limited capacity, even some visitors will be turned away. Like, how did?
Yeah.
This is an open question for anybody to take, but is there a way we can minimize that? People being physically turned away once they walk up to our buildings?
I think setting expectations right away from like the beginning is a huge thing. Like just making sure that whether that information is listed on your website, whether it's in a video, wherever it is, like this is what you can expect when you get here.
Mm-hmm.
Fewer surprises.
Yeah. Another thing that can be done too, that, you know, we've actually discussed is having, you know, going back and looking at your church history, how many new members do you have that come on average per month or per service, and setting aside a specific area in your sanctuary for just those new congregants. So that way you can reserve a spot for newcomers coming into Christ, and then you can, you know, ask the people that are a part of your congregation to come to a different service. And that's one of the things, you know, we're looking like really with that, there's all options are on the table at this point. Do we expand the number of services? Do we shorten the length of the service? Do we use our electronic platforms to schedule and actually do a RSVP? So each person gets a specific seat for a specific service time. There's so many things that we're looking through as far as the Rock Church is concerned to get the congregation back into the doors.
Yeah, and Bayview is pretty much on that same track, all the way out to the parking lot, right? Not even adjacent parking spots. You know, again, we're an enclosed campus, so we have that luxury. We're looking at, multiple services or services across multiple buildings on our campus. you know, but it's trying to facilitate that number of people safely that want to participate in a physical on-site worship experience.
And from a PR perspective, Sarah, what can places of worship do to make that that limitation as attractive as possible to their potential attendees?
Well, you know, developing good relationships with the media and letting them know what your restrictions are, but also working not just with PR, but a database of your church, making sure your database is accurate, making sure that you have information on all the people who've donated to your church before, past attendees, if you have all that information, making sure if you have several databases that they're all merged and then duplicates are eliminated so that you can streamline these opening procedures real quickly to people.
I would imagine it's in the magic of the wording you're using.
Yeah. And it's really, you know, keeping in mind the mission of your church, you know, and the voice of your church and the concerns that may have been raised by some of your congregants in a past survey or in messages to church staff. You want to make sure you address some of those. And what we found that's helpful in those messages is to provide a link for details, either a link to frequently asked questions with extensive answers, or a link to CDC guidelines or state of California guidelines. We found that it's better for us to provide links to additional information for those people in the church that really want to dig down into it, instead of having them ask us and open this whole long conversation. But too much information sometimes is okay, as long as a link is a quick way of giving it to them.
Right. Todd, if you guys could do one thing over, what would it be, if any?
I would say that, you know, our SLT, which our senior leadership team, they moved fairly quickly, but I think, and be careful how I say this, the position that I hold at our church, I'm trying to say it without saying it, but I think that a lot more communication needed to take place between our senior leadership and staff and myself. There's certain things I've been left out of, and that's kind of, unfortunately, it started 4 months ago and it's kind of continued because I'm basically working from home, as is 50% of our staff. So I think that would be, for me, a major lesson learned is don't forget about your security guy. Because as you know, Mike, I'm the only one. I have 140 volunteers and I'm running the show for that. But if I'm out of sight, in some respects, I'm out of mind. So decisions are being made that probably need my input. And well, I'm not going to lie here. They need my input, but my input's not there, and I find out afterwards. So I would say, don't forget about your security people, because so much of what we're talking about with reopening impacts the security of our people and our buildings and assets and all those different kinds of things.
I see Kirk laughing. He and I talked a little bit on the phone about that. I was just listening to him go on about that kind of exact thing. It's pretty interesting.
That's a mic drop there, Todd. Good point.
Talk about moving forward in the community. I feel like I have to mention InfraGard, and I don't know how many people out there listen to members of InfraGard, but I got to tell you, it's been beneficial in a lot of ways, and it will help our community overall in a lot of ways. InfraGard is, like I said, FBI-led civilian organization. It's all vetted people. It's free, but it's application driven. And it's a group of people with interest in protecting our homeland security interest, right? Once you're in, there's vast amounts of training that's available. And there's an internal reporting system for suspicious activity called the SAR, Suspicious Activity Report. You get trained in all kinds of terrorism and surveillance and counter-surveillance techniques. It's just so beneficial. So I just want to recommend to people watching to check it out and join. Consider joining at least. I just want to read the different sectors involved in InfraGard. There's 16 sectors, if people are still wondering what it is, but They include agriculture and food, the chemical sector, communications, critical manufacturing, dams, defense industrial base, emergency services, energy, financial services, government facilities, commercial facilities, healthcare and public health, IT, nuclear reactors, materials and waste, transportation, water and wastewater systems. That's a lot of different sectors. And churches fall under, well, most of the churches fall under the commercial facility sector. So I myself am a co-sector chief of San Diego. I can't recommend it enough. Again, it's all free, training's unlimited. It's a great benefit. And I would say go join. So to my panel, I would say, as we continue to navigate in our uncertain times right now, are there any words of encouragement or wisdom that you want to leave with our viewers today?
Well, I guess I could go back to communicate. Respect your leaders, respect the positions that they hold, use deference in all aspects of what you do, because it's actually okay for somebody below you to make a decision, or somebody that you know, you may not say, well, that would be the person I would choose to make that decision, but everybody has something to say, and we need to kind of consider all of that as we work through this.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said, Todd. You know, in a situation like this, a pandemic like this, nobody really has the answer. So with that being the mindset, you never know where that answer is going to come from. So definitely embrace every single voice, because every voice has power. And, you know, really, you know, start planning now. If we go into another shutdown, as soon as we go into that shutdown, start planning for the reopening, because we are going to reopen. And the sooner we can get ahead of it, the easier and more seamless it's going to be for your congregants and for your staff.
Yeah, and I would throw in there also network, right? You know, not just within your four walls of your institution, but reach out. That's one thing Rock has done splendidly, is kind of created that gravity to pull us all together. You know, your church isn't just alone. Network with other churches and other institutions, and be able to leverage their strengths and bring them to your site.
And if you see a church that's doing something that you like, don't hesitate to reach out to the people in that church, because typically they're going to be open and responsive to try to help you out in this day and age too. And my other suggestion is just from the marketing side is plan ahead and plan for the worst case right now, because you already know how to do things when you're meeting in person. But go ahead, if you have any downtime now, plan for things that might happen. Like we're having a meeting next week about Christmas. We're already doing a video production for that. We're trying, thinking ahead that may not be an in-person event. So just plan as far ahead as you can.
Definitely. I think the only thing I would add is just it's easy to get wrapped up in just like all of these practical things, but just to keep in mind, like, this has been very emotional for a lot of people, very personal, and some very real grief has happened even in the midst of this virus. So just remembering that, like, as church leadership, we get to care for people's souls, and that's what church is, family, and that's what this is about. So yeah, we have to do that safely, but don't neglect just caring for people's souls in the midst of this.
Man, so much wisdom on this panel. So much appreciated. You know, I would encourage our viewers to ask themselves a couple of questions, like, what did you learn from today? What did you get from it? Will you share with others? And what are you going to do with it yourself? Right? Because information is disinformation if we're sitting on it. If we learn one or two things today, even us on this panel, we should be looking to deploy that and to share that information. We would love to hear from everyone watching, to see, by way of a survey that may go out to you. If you actually signed up for it, you would get that link. If you did not sign up for it and someone shared a link with you, I'd ask you to go to safetyconference@sdrock.com, and we'd be happy to send you a survey. We're trying to learn. We're new at this electronic format deal. Next year, 2021, in June, we're going to have hopefully in-person safety conference, our 10-year anniversary. We've done it 9 years in person already, 1 year online as a webinar. Please join us, register now. You've got some discounts happening right now. Just want to say thank you to all our panelists, Todd, Kurt, Sarah, Ariel. What's that guy's name down there? Sean. Sean and I work together. So thank you very much, everybody. If you have any follow-up questions for any participants, then I would ask you to email those also to safetyconference.com. And I just want to say thank you to a few groups of people, right? I'm talking to you, but there's so many people behind the scenes that made this happen for all of us, not just for me doing this conference, but to our safety team. It does all the heavy lifting for this, and that you never even saw did this whole thing. I just want to say thank you to them. Our production team at The Rock, our facilities team at The Rock, our Marcom team at The Rock, accounting. They're not approving much money these days, but any little bit helps. And again, my staff, the safety team, did all the heavy lifting while I'm just sitting here heavy. So I appreciate you guys, you panelists, and your experience and your time and what you brought. And I'm just praying for everybody's safety. So thank you so much. And we're signing off for 2020.
Thank you, Mike. It was an honor. Appreciate it. You guys have a great day. It's nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
God bless.
All right.